love is like a flower, I'm trying to get you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.
Okay, and we are back again. I guess that makes it time for another first chapter. I'm Rodney V. Smith. The V is for vaccination because it's that type of year. And I'm a Wattpad author and star, and also the winner of a Wattie Award in 2018 for my book The Canefield Killer, which is available on Wattpad. So make sure to check it out. Now, for Black History Month, actually, it's Black History Month in Canada and the U.S. It's not a worldwide thing, but for during this time, it's usually a good idea to honor Black history, and it's a worldwide thing. But in any case, a lot of people are looking at Black history. Wattpad has compiled a list of books to feature and to celebrate Black stories. Now, I'm using that list as well as some of my own selections to bring these stories into focus. The best way to do that? Well, I'm going to be reading the first chapter of each book, just so you guys get an idea of what all these books are about. And I'm just going to let the work speak for itself. My job is not to review; it's just to read and hopefully crack myself up just from reading some of these stories, or just get pretty much engaged. So this is usually my first time reading, and I'm doing it all live. There are no edits. You get all the mistakes. This is my first chapters. So tonight's author is Leslie Ann Sanders with her novel Behold the Scalded. As always, all the links are in the description. Okay, you ready? Let's check it out. Okay, I suppose we should look at the synopsis. You think that I'd have actually a hang of this by now. But, okay, here we go. So, 16-year-old Kyla Shepard conjures hellish creatures who reek of burnt sugar and scorch anything in their path, and summoning these creatures only requires a thought. While surviving in a blackened radius dubbed the Scalded, she befriends Lilac Pauper, an enigmatic young man who aims to help her tame her imaginings before they run rampant and consume everything in their path, including them. This is inspired by the short story Make It Stop, also written by Leslie by L.L. Sanders. This is Leslie's pen name. Read the twisted tale on my profile. Like I said, the links to the profile are in the description. Alright, let's get reading. Oh no, we're missing a screen. What happened there? I can't read if I can't see my screen. So, see, this is what I mean about mistakes. And here we go. Broadcast it. And, alright. On to the first chapter. Okay, so chapter 1. In the Scalded, there are two things to get used to: the loneliness and the nightmarish creatures that haunt more than just my nightmares. The scorched line that separated the rich and inky radius of overgrown black roots from the rest of the city's dull green grass lay at my feet. I noted the differences between the old terrain that I had known a couple years ago and the inky recent growth that I had become accustomed to. The line of demarcation in the soil burned into my sights as I allowed realization to rip at my heart. I had caused it. Even though the last few months of my life had become nothing more than hiding, surviving, and defending myself from those who pushed past the city's barricades to gawk, investigate, and take samples of the newly formed vegetation inside the 2-mile circle, I've become used to it. And although some city folk entered, they never stayed. Speaking of barricades, the inky border had somehow overtaken the police barricade and made their orange color dull and worn. It had been only a couple of months since those barricades were safe from the edge by a few feet. I stared at the thick array of roots that nearly toppled the plastic barriers and forced them to rest at unnatural angles. Was the radius growing? Expanding? A scuffling from behind startled me, and I turned to face the dense forest of trees. The patches of leaves stood out like nothing else, as the full, fluffy fronds coated the branches in large, separated puffs. I cocked my head to peer beyond the bristles, not expecting researchers this late as the sun was setting, nor expecting the huntsmen this early as the sun was still out. I knew better than to allow my emotions to get the best of me. Ever since the initial incident, I've done my best to keep my temper neutral and my thoughts pure. Deathly afraid of what my imagination can produce, I left speculation to the wind, deciding not to focus too heavily on the what ifs. Frustrated with the lack of response, I focused my eyesight on the leathery black coating of the tree near the scuffling. Specks of the old, dried and crumbling brown bark peered through pieces of the hardened material that had overtaken it. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone. "You can't fool me. Show yourself." I've been foraging. I have been here foraging far too long to be fooled into thinking the noise was only the wind or a small woodland creature. The only creatures in this Scalded that lived and contained a beating heart were people. People who were nearby or too close when the incident occurred, who made this place their home, or forced their way in from the outside after. The latter never go too far or stay too long. But those are the creatures with a beating heart. The others, however, I turned my head toward the crack of a snapping twig. Now that I was sure it wasn't my ears playing tricks on me, I eased behind the wide trunk of a sheet of a. Now that I was sure it wasn't my eye. Okay, you know what? I'm going to start this again. I turned my head toward the crack of a snapping twig. Now that I was sure it wasn't my ears playing tricks on me, I eased behind the wide trunk of a tree to shield me from whoever or whatever was stalking me. I waited until a person appeared with a head of hair as white as snow. Their narrow eyes locked onto mine and we stood stunned. A smudge of black residue smeared across the pale skin on the corner of their lips and continued along the cheek. My heart sped up with anticipation, but I inhaled slowly to counter it. "Leave me be." I damn near growled, but didn't have to as they pulled up the cuffs of their blemished sleeves and backed away behind the thick of the forest. As I headed through the trees toward my sanctuary, the hem of my shirt caught and snagged the bristles of fuzzy leaves as I hurried by. That encounter marked the first time that I had seen someone like them before. Although they seemed harmless, a lot about their appearance said plenty. They were young, like me, similar build with a thin frame, but taller by a few inches. They had to be an inhabitant of the Scalded, since the smudge on their chiseled cheek showed they took nourishment from the land. They were cautious and vigilant, but something about them seemed a bit odd or out of place. I moved through the familiar trail of the vegetation. The roof of the building came into view in the distance. No matter what went on inside the Scalded, the torn down and abused walls of the hospital always felt like home. It had been home for 2 years before the incident, and it remained that way even in its dilapidated state. Entering the deserted building, I realized how fortunate I was that no one came to this spot. Even the stragglers who stayed behind and refused to exit the Scalded radius, knew better than to return to ground zero. To be able to call a hospital my resting place, some would call it lucky. I called it cursed. I pulled the tattered Winnie the Pooh backpack from my back, an homage to Nurse Jane and her daughter, who loved him so much, and tossed it on the dirty counter of the front desk reception. Water break. "Hey, Jane." I unzipped the pack and watched the lopsided chair at the other side of the desk through my periphery. "I met someone up there. Strange kind of character, hair like I've never seen." I paused, thinking about the short pixie cut and bone straight strands. White as snow. It's odd. I pulled a bundle of dried and dead puffy leaves from my pack and tossed them on the counter. "Brought back some kindling. Maybe I could liven this place up with a bit of a cozy fire. Maybe I could liven this place up a bit with a cozy fire. What do you think?" I stared at the empty seat, envisioning Nurse Jane's dark brown eyes and her infamous super short haircut. An outline of her body, raped in a white lab coat, appeared, but immediately dissipated. Yeah, disappointing. I know. I left the bag on the counter, and the light from the setting sun shone rays of orange through the broken and missing parts of the glass windows, announcing the approaching night. In no time, the hunters would step foot over the inky threshold and enter the Scalded to find trophies they could take back to their wives and children to prove they had fought the boogeyman and are actively taking back their land. I could continue to allow the hospital to hide and protect me. However, when the moonlight shines and illuminates the forest, that's the optimal time to get nourishment. In the mid of night was when the roots were the most satisfying and tender. Stockpiling them turned them into nothing more than dry, dead kindling almost immediately. But worse than facing the hunters during the midnight moonlight was closing my eyes and heading off to the nightmarish place of my dreams. Staying awake and fighting off hunger could only work for so long. And right now, hunger called. Okay, that is the end of... Okay, that's the end of Behold the Scalded. That's it. You can check out more of Leslie's work on Wattpad. You can follow the link in the description, and you can also follow her on social media as well. I believe she is Leslie L. Sanders, and Wattpad LL Sanders. Yeah. Anyway, links are down below. Anyway, saying anyway a lot. That's all for tonight. So thanks for joining. Don't forget to click on the like button down there and subscribe if you want to listen to me read some more first chapters. I'll be covering more stories from Black authors for the rest of the month. But you can also find the reading list on my profile and on the front page of Wattpad. They're kind of visible there. I update 5 days a week, and there's always something new to find. Happy reading. And good night. Good night.
My love is like a flower, I'm trying to get you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.